it's Betsy with the T.T.C podcast, and we are back for our next session. Last week, we did a deep dive into week one, and we gave you an example of some classroom procedures. We offered you a template for some of those rules that you can edit and retool and redesign in your own way. Just make a copy of that and use it in your own classroom. My partner Jenny and I, we are prepared to do a deep dive into week two of your teaching year.
And so, this is just an opportunity to think about what worked and didn't work in the first week of school. Some things I'm sure you've nailed completely and feel really great about, which is awesome. And then other times you realize pretty immediately that there are some things you need to either do over completely or maybe massage a little bit, and that's totally fine. I think Betsy would probably agree with me on this that veteran teachers have to do the same thing every year, according to whether or not you've been moved to a new room or you just have a particular group of students with, either unusual or specific needs or anything that's thrown your way where you have to, rethink how you're implementing not just classroom management strategies, but your actual curriculum delivery and the things that go along with that.
So, yeah, the second week of teaching for everybody, whether you are a first year, fifth year, 26-year teacher, is always very, very stressful. My husband, my daughter, who is in college, they both knew and know that probably from about that first teacher workday all the way until like the beginning of October, I'll be working 12 to 15 hours a day. Like it's going to be a lot of work, a lot of adjustments, a lot of retooling. And the biggest thing that we want you to know about this second and even the third or fourth week of the school year is that you are not alone. We are all feeling this same pressure and this same stress, and we all have to make these same adjustments. We sort of um, have been trained to do sort of this work, right? Especially if you have come out of a education program in college, right? You're prepared for this and it gives you all these great ideas on paper. But then when you go into the classroom, it's almost like you're being thrown into the deep end. You're being thrown to the wolves, right? And a lot of the things that are written down on paper don't really go the way that you expect them to do. And so it's sort of like you are 16 years old and you've read the driving manual, right? You've read all the rules and you've memorized all the signs and you know what to do in all of these different situations. But until you get behind the wheel and you actually drive that car, right? You don't really know how to drive. You have to get that experience behind the wheel. And so the manual is not going to train you for those things. And so you sort of have to learn on the job. There's a lot of things in teaching that you just have to learn on the job, and you sort of have to course correct and you have to change in order to not get completely overwhelmed and just want to walk out of the school building like on the second or third day.
And, the exhaustion level is real. You cannot think too little of yourself or feel like there's something you're not doing right because you're just so tired. We've talked about how teaching is, in the top 10 most stressful jobs. We make as many decisions sometimes as a surgeon will make, trying to, just decide and make sure they get their patient through this surgery um, alive, and it's a very stressful situation for teachers to be in a room with 30, sometimes more children trying to make these procedures work with all the different personalities and things going on. So you're going to be tired. I'm always tired the second week of school. Like Betsy said, it's not until like October that just feel like I've like overcome the first big obstacle of exhaustion, and I know I feel good about how things are going in the classroom.
Yeah, and so that's a really important part of it is this exhaustion. And we talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago, where you do feel exhausted, but you have to at the same time take care of yourself. We have to do self-care. You have to get some rest. And so even if you are working those 12 hours a day, really Monday through Saturday, you set aside Sunday to, just rest, take a break. You a lot of people don't really understand teaching is it
All
is one of
encompassing. It's
it
all
is it is
encompassing.
it is one of the most stressful professions, but you and I don't know that there's really any other job that is like this. You're responsible for 30 other people, not just teaching them your content, but making sure that they are not in danger, right? Making sure that just anything that happens in that classroom, you are responsible for. And so even, the surgeon, they are responsible for the life or death of one person. But in teaching, we have, 30 littles that we are responsible for. And so you um, have that responsibility and sort of that weight. It is a weight. And just mentally preparing yourself for that is sort of exhausting. But then on top of that, you sort of have to give of yourself. You're teaching these kids the things that you know and that you're an expert on. And so you're giving yourself, but at the same time you are emotionally drained because of some of the things, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, um, of some of the things that your students go through during the year. Maybe they're hungry, or that they come with dirty clothes, or that they don't have a great home life. So, yes, you are intellectually giving them material and teaching them your content, and then mentally that's exhausting, but it's also emotionally exhausting. And then just keeping control of the classroom and telling people to sit down or to be quiet, or lining them up orderly, or doing a tornado drill, that's also physically exhausting. And so I don't, again, really know of any other profession where you are mentally, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, physically exhausted on a daily basis because you're responsible for so many other people.
Hmm.
And we're not talking about, I'm talking about, because this is what our podcasts are about, is good teaching. Like, we're training you to be great teachers. And so we're not talking about those teachers that come in, sit behind the desk, and hand out a worksheet every day, or that just are
Play
there to get,
videos
yeah,
or
play videos or get a
games all
paycheck,
day.
or those kind of things. We're talking about people that really are dedicated to teaching, that want to make a difference, that care about kids and their futures. And so, if you are one of those teachers that really puts themselves into the entire thing, um, you're really going to have a big toll taken on you. Those first, I would say, at least 6 weeks of school. And the second and the third weeks is when you realize that, and you might say
Hmm.
to yourself, what have I gotten myself into?
Well, like Betsy said, most civil servant jobs, and I consider teaching to be a civil servant job. We are here to improve the life outcomes of people that we don't know, kids that we may never see again. We're here to improve, hopefully, the way our community is going to be run in the next several generations. We're here to, make a difference in how not just the children we teach, but how their parents feel about themselves and how well they're raising their children. We are investing in the future, and our students can become anything, and they can also get into any kind of, dangerous, troublesome situations as well. And so I really consider teaching to be like being a judge, or being a doctor, or being a police officer or a firefighter. We're putting ourselves out there for the community, not knowing what may come next when we're done with these children. And so you have to love children. It's hard work.
But I will say, along with that, it is very rewarding.
Absolutely.
Both Jenny and I keep in contact with former children, and I know I still text message and keep in contact with students that I taught 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
And so when you develop those relationships and you see the success stories, then that really is rewarding, and you feel like you truly have made a difference. And so that is really the reason that a lot of us keep doing what we do for as long as we do, because it is a stressful job. It is a hard job, but we know we're investing in the future, and we know that our job is very necessary for that future.
And
So,
before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's podcast, I want you to stop and think, who is the teacher who changed your life? Or who are the teachers that everyone can say, I remember this teacher or that teacher. They made me feel so good about myself, or they never gave up on me. That feeling is such a rewarding feeling. Betsy and I don't go around telling our friends, guess whose life we changed, guess whose student, that's not what we mean. We just mean knowing that you helped another individual have a good life is an astounding it's an astounding thing. I can't compare it to anything else besides my daughter and how much I love her. So, yeah.
all right. So, thank you for that encouragement. And we're going to jump right into the nitty gritty. We are a little bit short on time, but we're just going to give you some things that you may or may not need to modify this second week. So, sort of the very first thing that you need to do is, do you need to retool any of your procedures? Do you like lining up? Is that working well? Do you need to change the way you line the kids up? If you do need to change some of those procedures, lining up, seating charts, how you group the kids, all of those things, you need to do that sooner rather than later. Like, you really need to jump on those things that you notice are problems. If you notice that there are people that are sitting in back talking to their friends that need to be moved perhaps in the front, or they need to be separated, it's really to your benefit to go ahead and do that ahead of time. Because if you go ahead and get those things taken care of early, then um, it's going to sort of be a little easier on you later. And that's one of the philosophies that Jenny and I both have, is if you sort of take care of things early in the school year, then the rest of the school year, especially toward the end of the school year, and we'll talk about that, will be a lot easier. So, maybe you need to make those parent phone calls and try to start out with some positives. Again, uh, I learned this, and it's been relatively recently, maybe within the past 5 or 6 years. When you make a phone call, you start out with a positive, and then you put in a negative, and then you put in a positive at the end. So it's sort of like a hamburger: positive, negative, positive. And it sort of looks like that. So you start out with the bun, which is a positive. Then the meat of your call is the negative, of course. That's the meat. But then the bottom bun is another positive. So if you could do that method, positive, negative, positive, it does help a little bit. Especially when you're trying to get that classroom management down.
And so, other things that you might think about the second week of school. Um, have you figured out your kids well enough to perhaps start thinking about an incentive system. Um, are there what ways have you found that really, grab your kids' attention and give them some buy-in? Are there children that you still feel like you're just not reaching at all? Are there children in your class who haven't spoken a word out loud yet? You will see that. Um, and have you gotten any kind of read on where they are academically in your content? Have you been able to do any leveling, meaning if you teach math, what are their math facts like? Are they able to get through them fairly quickly? If you teach ELA, have you been able to figure out what grade level they're reading on yet? Do you have even just a hunch that you may have half a class that's not reading at a sixth grade level? Um, have you started to notice already certain behaviors? Maybe you have kids who are on the spectrum but not identified. Maybe you have kids that uh, didn't show any behavior issues at all the first week, but now that they're starting to get comfortable, you're seeing some things. How do you deal with that? And we've talked about this before. If you don't know the answers to these things, or you're just not sure how to finesse your class enough to get that initial read on their abilities, talk to someone who can show you or give you their veteran experience on how to do it. um there are lots of things that you're going to have to sort of change, modify throughout the first couple weeks of school. And it's okay. Have your certain procedures in place, your classroom expectations, raise your hand before you speak. Don't throw things at people. Keep your hands to yourselves. Those kinds of things never change. But do you have that autistic kid that you're seeing really is going to need some other very understanding, nice children sitting around them? So these are just some things that you'll start noticing to tweak those first few weeks of school. And the second week is a good time to really step back and ask yourself, what do I know? What do I not know? How can I figure it out?
Yeah, and so just to sort of wrap up things, I would like to just hit on two more topics. The very first topic that I'd like to hit on is sort of goes along with what Jenny was just saying. The second week of school, you probably have noticed some of your students and what kind of behaviors they may or may not have. The second week of school is a really good time to maybe do some one-on-ones with some of these kids that have some behavior issues, perhaps, or academic issues. A lot of times behavior issues stem from students just not knowing the material. For example, in ELA, a
Absolutely.
lot of our students have behavior problems because they just can't read the words. And so, if they're sitting in an eighth grade classroom and they can't pronounce the words, then they're going to act out. If they can't read silently, they're going to cause behavior problems. So, it might be a good time for you to just meet with some of these kids that you notice are struggling, whether that's just they're not talking in class, they're completely silent, they have behaviors, you already know there's some sort of academic issue with them. You need to just sit down maybe and talk with them. And you'd be really surprised. Maybe not younger elementary, but I would say probably from about fourth grade up. If you just talk to kids like they're adults and have a real
Mhm.
conversation with them, then a lot of times they will say, oh, well, this person really is hearing me. They're hearing me, they're listening, and they really do try to respond to you. I mean, there are exceptions. You can talk to some kids and it's like banging your head against the wall, but a lot of kids will respect that you want to take that time out and really meet them where they are. And even if they were a behavior problem before, they might not be such a behavior problem later because you've sort of had that conversation with them. And then the last thing I want to hit is, and this is really, really important, and Jenny and I have both done it. As teachers, you need to be observant and see what's working for other people. Like if you see a teacher that just has amazing students, her kids are always lined up in the hall and they are always on point and they are always quiet, and she can just give them the look and they're fine,
Mhm.
then go to them and ask for help. Or if you see that there's something that they are doing, then steal whatever that is and implement that in the classroom. It is never too late to do things, and then and tell the kids, listen, I know that Miss Manus, this works for her, and so we're going to start doing this way in our classroom because it works, right? And so again, you tell them one on one or as a classroom, this is what we are going to do for you to try and get things under control, because we are a team and we are seeing what works in other classrooms and we want our classroom to be just the same. So,
Um, okay, yeah, sorry, Betsy. I was just gonna
no,
say, I think it would be cool, and we'll have a podcast soon on what those conversations should look like or could look like. There are some questions you don't want to ask. You'd rather have them volunteer that information, and then there's leading questions that will get you more information than just yes or no questions. So but this has been an awesome podcast, and we thank you for joining us. And as always, if you need anything at all from us, send us a message, drop a line below the video, and we will absolutely make time to speak with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
we'll see you next week. Bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye.